Previously on He Made Me Do It.
They should have looked at this case and said, wow, she's abused.
Has anyone forced you or threatened you in any way to get you to plead guilty?
No. They have a duty to look into all of the claims, as does law enforcement.
He said he was investigating it. He said he was doing stuff. And now nothing.
So our system responded to her only as a perpetrator, not as a victim. And I think we have to be able to do both.
Me personally, I just say, why? Why do you come to Anthem?
It's a question we've had this whole time. Not just why this jewelry store, but why Helen? Why any of this? Helen told us that Matthew Jones picked this store because he thought he could get a lot of money. For Joe Alvarez, no answer justifies what happened.
We can't change what happened, right? It happened. We can't change the emotional effect on those individuals. And quite frankly, not only the individuals inside that store. You know, as a community, there's individuals that were shook by that. Hey, we came to Anthem because it's this little community where things like that don't happen, right? You start thinking through that and saying, is this the right place? One of the victims, the jeweler, was shot several times. And so we went into pray mode. The following day or so, I met with my Rotary group and I said, look, we got to do something here. Sometimes I still get goosebumps about what happened that day. And, you know, at the end of the day, we were able to raise $38,000 in a 5-hour car wash. I mean, that, to me, shows the support that this community gives its members.
Keep going, keep going.
Support. The jeweler needed a lot.
It was a long road. I visited him in his hospital. I visited him in rehab. He's a fighter. He wasn't going to let this thing get him down. There's a sentencing. They're paying their dues, and we're going to go on.
More than a year after the robbery, everyone had to face that day again.
Good morning, Judge Davina Godley for Matthew Jones, who's present in custody, ready to proceed with sentencing.
Matthew Jones went before the judge first. You won't see the jewelry store employees speaking in court, but you can hear their voices.
We didn't ask for this. We had no choice. My life will never be the same.
The sounds of sirens continue to bring back horrific memories of that day. I felt like any form of safety and peace I ever had was taken from me that day.
The mental and emotional scars I have are immense, and they will remain with me for the rest of my life. He must face the consequences of his choices, and the punishment should reflect the severity of the trauma he inflicted upon his innocent lives.
Matthew Jones sat and listened until it was his turn to talk.
I just wanted to take full responsibility for my actions. It's not like I planned every detail out of that day.
He didn't apologize.
And I do want to, get the help that I need. I'm trying to, find the light. You know, it's a hard goal from where I'm at right now. But I still see the light, and I'm just thankful that, things weren't worse.
The judge sentenced Matthew Jones to the max under his plea deal, 30 years in prison. But Helen's sentencing was different. The question of whether she's a suspect, victim, or both at the forefront. Some of the jewelry store victims addressed her directly.
I hope the court considers the full extent of the harm caused to my employees, myself, my family, and our community when finalizing the sentences for these two monsters.
Destruction, terror, and pain. What an awful way, Helen, to impact the world. I don't know her story or how it led her to where she is today, but my honest prayer is that she seek to have a better impact on the lives of others than she had on mine.
And no matter what you say, you still committed these crimes. I think you misunderstand the definition of what a victim is. We are victims.
The prosecutor dug in.
She may be a victim, and she may be a victim by Matthew Jones. But here, in this matter, as to this robbery, as to the assaults, as to the trauma, she is not the victim. She's the perpetrator. Her having fear placed upon her does not give her the right to put that fear onto others.
It was very hard to know how they feel about my daughter.
Helen's mom, Kimberly Leonard.
They didn't know her.
Flew in from Vermont to support Helen.
So it's really hard to hear what they have to say about her, that they're afraid of her.
Kim wanted the judge, the prosecutor, the jewelry store employees to know the Helen she knows.
Those weeks that she was with Matthew changed Helen's life forever.
Helen had a village. including her mom. 20 people wrote letters to the judge or spoke out in court, asking for Helen to get a second chance.
This is a young lady who has been through more than any human should ever have to endure. I also want it to be known that Helen is not a danger to anyone.
Helen has faced a lot of trauma in her young life.
She begged him no. She kept telling him no, no, no.
He used physical violence, sexual violence, emotional manipulation, and threats of harm to control Miss Simmons.
Dominique even wrote an expert report to try and mitigate Helen's sentence.
Did you expect to be helping in a defense?
This is the first time in my career that I've ever been on that side of the line. This was a little bit uncomfortable for me in the sense that I recognize the incredible trauma that the robbery victims experienced and how it will affect their life. But the fact that there was a lack of discussion, a lack of attention to the incredible trauma that Helen Simmons experienced during those 2 weeks, to acknowledge what had happened to her and why she was there, give them some answers.
Helen's defense gave one final plea.
Matthew Jones was never charged for what he did to Helen Simmons. I'm glad he got 30 years today. I think he should get another 30 years for what he did to Helen.
Then Helen had her chance to speak.
I've been waiting for over a year to be able to apologize to the victims and their families. I was so scared, and I can't imagine how scared you guys were. I'm so sorry. I know it's not an excuse for me to be scared. I know it's not an excuse for me to, feel like I didn't have a choice. I know it's not an excuse. I wish I could have done something. I helped Matthew Jones that day scare and traumatize you all. I destroyed some of your property, and for those things I take full responsibility. And I accept the consequences of those actions. I hope that you don't hate me. I hope that you're not afraid of me. And I pray that someday you can forgive me. I was just so scared of what he would do to me too. And I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Oh my God.
The judge had a lot to consider. He called the state's plea offer generous, but also summed up the grayness of this case in a black and white way.
I can say that had Mr. Jones never met you, I think Mr. Jones still would have committed a crime like this. On the other hand, I think if you had never met Mr. Jones, I don't think you would have ever been involved in a crime like this.
That's the thing about court. It's very black and white. You're guilty or you're not. Helen's story is believable, but it hasn't been thoroughly investigated to prove if it's true. The fact is that Helen was part of a robbery, and she was going to pay for it.
I want everyone to know in the courtroom that my job a lot of days isn't easy, and I have to fashion punishment. It is what it is, it's punishment.
The judge sentenced Helen to 6 years in prison. When Helen Simmons and Matthew Jones were first arrested in the U-Haul, Helen said they were on their way to see the ocean at Huntington Beach. She never made it, just like she never made it to ASU, never made it to her journalism classes, never made it to her dream. It all came crashing down.
Nothing good comes out of anything bad, but I think that the legal system has taken action. We've got a little bit of closure. Let's move forward. We'll never forget it, but we'll move forward.
But again, she's made these claims of he abused her into it, he abused her after.
Who knows? I can't comment on that. I don't know. It'd be a shame if that's what happened. It really would. You know what? She was an adult. She knew what she was doing when she got in there. There are ways, in my opinion, that she could have not done it, but that's just my opinion.
Do you think the sentence was fair?
Been wrestling with this for a little bit.
Like the judge basically said, if it wasn't for him, she wouldn't have committed it. Then why is she serving 6 years?
The system is set up for women like this or any victim like this to really fail.
Fairness in the criminal justice system is really complicated. It has to be fair for the victims of the robbery, and it has to have some purpose. Do I think having her go to prison for 6 years has any purpose? I don't. I think she would benefit from trauma-focused therapy and rehabilitation of her own sense of self and who she is, so this doesn't happen to her again in her life. But that's not how it worked out.
As much as Helen's loved ones and advocates want to see her out of prison, there's a part of Helen that's conflicted.
In some ways it's a good thing because, he's going to be locked up for a long time and he won't be able to hurt anybody else. He won't be able to hurt another woman or another stranger.
I deserve to go to prison for destroying their property, for coming into the store, for, hurting their feelings and scaring them and traumatizing them. I understand that. I need to get punished for that because, I did that. However, for me to get punished for his actions, I feel like it's not right.
She regrets the plea deal and wishes her team helped her fight for lesser charges or a lesser sentence.
I don't want to say I feel like I've been cheated by the justice system, but I feel like nobody cares. I feel like the state didn't believe me. I feel like they think that it's all allegations and that I said these things so maybe I would get off easy.
It's easy to, from the outside, look at this situation and say to yourself, I would never do something like this. Even as myself, I can't imagine ever going into a jewelry store like she did. But I think when you're in the thick of it, being abused and such and having these threats against you and you have a gun to your head and someone you care about life is being threatened as well, I think the instinct to survive is so strong.
It will impact my career and the things that I want to do and how I want to work with victims of trafficking in the future. This case has really flagged for us that there are many, many more people who are in that forced criminality situation. We have a role there to advocate for leniency for them because of that victimization.
The I-Team reached out to Matthew Jones in prison for this story, but haven't gotten any answers back. His attorney also declined to speak with us. In December 2023, he filed for post-conviction relief, calling his sentence excessively harsh compared to Helen's, and that he was influenced by inadequate legal representation. In August, the judge threw out Jones's request, saying there was ample evidence he planned the robbery and indications that he coerced Helen into participating. MCSO says Helen's 2 cases against Jones are still open, and they're attempting to set up an interview with Jones in prison. The county attorney's office said in a statement that in the event new evidence is uncovered by law enforcement that shows Ms. Simmons may have been a victim of a crime in Arizona, we would certainly review the case.
And I will not give up on trying to get him charged and convicted for what he did to me as well, because he's just going to get out and do it again.
The last time we could record a conversation with Helen was before she moved from jail to Perryville, the state women's prison in Goodyear. Because of her violent charges, she's on a yard with higher security, but she's got a job and said she's been taking courses. She also said she's in therapy.
I'm excited to see her, I miss her, but to see her in prison, it's hard.
Helen's mom flew back out in July 2024 to visit Helen in prison.
And to be able to hug her felt wonderful. It's just hard to see her.
Why do you think it's so important that he be prosecuted for what he did to Helen?
He took some of her future. I am very angry. Being sex trafficked, you would think that they would look into that more, and they just don't care. I want the word out because something needs to change.
Our request to interview Helen in prison hasn't been approved.
Turn right onto North Perryville entrance.
But we have been able to go talk with her through visitation as we continue our reporting. Recently, she told me she'd rather be here than dead on July 12, 2022, if she didn't listen to Matthew Jones. More than 2 years after the robbery, she still believes he would have killed her if she didn't go into the jewelry store.
I'm still in planning when I get out and all this is over with. I'm still going to graduate from ASU. I'd like to...
You have 1 minute remaining.
And I have a lot of plans. I have a lot of dreams and goals, but I want to help other women. I hope that other women can see this and not feel alone. Maybe they can reach out and get help. Because not a lot of women know how to.
Helen finally got away from Matthew Jones, but she won't get out of prison until 2028.